All right, Cowboys fans, welcome back. We have some news concerning 3 new coaching hires for the Dallas Cowboys, and obviously your boy has a quick dossier on these guys so you can figure out exactly who the heck these new coaches are. Let's get right into it and be sure to subscribe for more Dallas Cowboys content. Bro, there was something on my lip and it felt like a fly. I hope it wasn't. Let's get right into it. All right, you see here, Calvin Watkins is reporting that the Cowboys are finalizing coaching moves today, according to 2 people with knowledge of the decisions. Steve Shimko is the new quarterbacks coach. Carlos Polk becomes assistant special teams coach, and Ken Dorsey is passing game specialist. Now, I personally think this is probably going to be a really good move as far as making Ken Dorsey the passing game specialist, and that's kind of where I want to start because he's the most notable name here. The other guys on this list, they're not all that, big name guys with these long glowing resumes or anything like that. These are more so, it looked like Brian Schottenheimer type hires, whereas one of the guys in Steve Shimko actually worked as an assistant quarterbacks coach under Brian Schottenheimer in Seattle, and that's pretty much the extent of what you're looking at with Steve Shimko. I mean, he's the current offensive coordinator for Boston College, but besides that, there's nothing on his resume that you should look at and be like, oh my God, this is the hire of the century. I am not about to piss in the cup until y'all is lemonade. All right, so Steve Shimko, not a lot there to chew on, but again, this is kind of like a trust the process type of hire right here. Same thing with Carlos Polk, not a real big name. I think the most notable thing about Carlos Polk is he did play for the Cowboys on special teams for like a season, I believe in like 2008 or something like that. So he did play here for a very, very, very short period of time. He only played here 1 season, so it's not like he's a Cowboy lifer or anything. But again, this is another guy who's just being hired as an assistant to the special teams coordinator, who is Nick Sorensen. This is going to be Carlos Polk's second time working under Nick Sorensen. And the reason I'm not going to dive too deep into what these assistants are going to be bringing, man, is because, to be quite honest, once you start getting into like assistants to coordinators and stuff like that, you truly don't know what these guys' responsibilities entail. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I do. All right, so we're going to move on from Carlos Polk as well. That's another hire that was made. Now, the most interesting hire of all the hires that were made is the Ken Dorsey hire. Why is the Ken Dorsey hire so interesting, you may ask me? AOC, what's interesting about Ken Dorsey? Well, what's interesting about Ken Dorsey is Ken Dorsey was the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills prior to Joe Brady taking over about midway through last season. Now, usually when you see an offensive coordinator get fired in the middle of the season, you're thinking that he's doing a terrible job, but that's actually not the case at all. During his time with the Buffalo Bills as the offensive coordinator, he put a resume up that's very similar to that of a Ben Johnson. Now, Ben Johnson, who's highly lauded for the offense he had with the Detroit Lions, Ken Dorsey put up very productive offenses with the Buffalo Bills. In his first season as offensive coordinator, he had the Bills number 2 in the NFL in yards and points per game. And in 2023, he had them in top 5 in yards with number 4 and number 6 with points on the offensive side. And this is both phases of the offense being productive here. The passing game and run game were pretty productive under a Ken Dorsey, up until the point he was fired about midway through the season for the Buffalo Bills last year. And the reason that firing happened, and we're not even worried about Cleveland because we all know Cleveland is a dumpster fire right now, so it's really not fair to look at any offensive ranks and think that Jameis Winston or Deshaun Watson is supposed to be able to lead him into these amazing offenses in Cleveland. But the interesting part about him being fired is, for one, he was literally fired almost without cause. He was fired because Josh Allen was turning the ball over an exorbitant amount of times for the Buffalo Bills. Even though they were a super productive offense, J.A. was turning that ball over. And the quote when he was fired was, "It just felt like it was time for a change." Bills head coach Sean McDermott told reporters later Tuesday after the announcement. We need to be a confident offensive football team and find consistent production. And that's really what it came down to. And that's when the quarterbacks coach Joe Brady kind of took over. And what's interesting is Joe Brady did a better job with the Bills offense, not because it became more explosive, because it actually took a couple steps back as it pertains to productivity. He did a better job because he took the ball out of the turnover machine Josh Allen's hand. He started running the ball with more intention and more focus. So this is why I say hiring Ken Dorsey, a guy that is prolific passing offenses, specifically to be a passing game specialist, this right here could be a seriously underrated move for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, something even more interesting when you really look into it is Buffalo Bills fans on the Buffalo Bills Reddit They were not buying this move. Ken Dorsey was a scapegoat and should never have been fired is a thread that was made. And they essentially laid out a bunch of statistics and facts about the Buffalo Bills and the differences between the offenses of Joe Brady and the Ken Dorsey, with the main difference just being ball security. And we all know that like coaches really don't control whether guys are fumbling or throwing a bunch of interceptions, and especially the way Josh Allen was throwing those interceptions. It wasn't really scheme interceptions. It was more so him taking unnecessary chances. But even in this thread, it shows Josh Allen had a higher passer rating and more yards under Dorsey. His average rating has dropped 5 points and passing yards by 25 since Brady took over. If you consider the Dallas game an outlier, both Dorsey and Brady's rushing attacks generated about the same number of yards per game, which is honestly a pretty interesting statistic right there. Dorsey had a pass to rush ratio of around 1 with the lead and 1.7 when behind. Brady has a pass to rush ratio of about 0.92 in all cases. Brady has had to play from behind a whopping 62 minutes of game time since taking over, or about 20% of the time. Dorsey was playing from behind close to the entirety of the Jags, Giants, Patriots, Bengals, and Broncos games. Dorsey only called more passing plays when the Bills needed points. With the lead, Dorsey was just as likely to call a run as a pass. In 3 of Dorsey's losses, the lead was blown in the final 5 minutes of the game. The defense gave up 10 points to the Jets in the last 5 minutes, and then special teams gave up a punt return TD in overtime. The defense gave up a TD to the Patriots with 2 minutes remaining. They gave up a field goal to Denver with 2 minutes remaining. To wit, if special teams hadn't have 12 men on the field for Denver field goal, the Bills would have won. The greatest margin of loss for any of Dorsey's losses was 6 points. Wow, that's a hell of a stat right there. The Bills turned the ball over significantly more under Dorsey than Brady. This includes interceptions, offensive fumbles, and special teams fumbles. The players on the field are ultimately responsible for turnovers, but not the OC. The coaching staff is responsible for grinding ball safety into the players. But I really like that Ken Dorsey hire. I think it will do good things for the Dallas Cowboys. And if you're looking for guys who are passionate about the game of football, look no further than the man who literally broke everything in sight. That man is more of a menace to inanimate objects than I am, and that's saying a lot.
They run out of time in the end, and the offensive coordinator, Dorsey.
All right, but either way, how about them Cowboys?
Calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, am I still them boys? Y'all usually check on me. Listen. I'm still them boys. Hey! Woo! Oh, shut up, my boy. Hey! I'm still them boys.